let's study the various types of animal tissues, which are classified into 4 broad categories: epithelial, connective, muscle, and neural tissues. It's also called muscular and nervous tissues. Epithelial tissues are a thin, protective, continuous sheet of cells, and they are of many varieties: squamous, stratified, cuboidal, columnar, and sensory. So there are 5 types. Columnar may have specialized cells called ciliated or glandular, which have specific functions. Now let's see the structure of all these types of epithelial tissues. As you can see here, squamous epithelium, as the name suggests, squamous means it's completely squashed, it's flat and thin, but they are irregularly shaped. Then we have stratified epithelium. There are many strata, like you can see this in the skin. Cuboidal epithelium has cells with the shape of cuboid. Columnar, the cells are in the shape of a column. Now, the last one, ciliated, is actually a special version of columnar epithelium. They have certain cilia, hair-like structures. Let's understand their functions and locations, which are very important questions from exam point of view. Squamous epithelium. The location is, it is found in the lining of the mouth and nasal cavities. The word lining is important. They are also found in the lining of blood vessels and lymph vessels. The function is to protect the underlying parts from mechanical injury, from germs, and from harmful chemicals. Next, we have the stratified epithelium. They are found in the skin and the cornea. They are composed of various strata. That is why when a dead skin wears off, there is already a new skin underneath it. Cuboidal epithelium. They are found in some parts of kidney tubules and some glandular ducts like salivary glands, pancreatic duct, etc. Columnar epithelium. They are found in the inner lining of stomach and intestines. Now, if this epithelium has cilia, that is a hair-like structures, then such cells are found in the lining of the trachea, that is a windpipe. So the cilia are continuously moving in a whiplash motion. They are driving the mucus and the trapped dust particles upwards, which can lead to coughing, to throw out any such dust particles caught by it. Now, glandular columnar epithelium are obviously found in glands. So they are found in the lining of the stomach and the intestine, and glands like tear glands, sweat glands, and liver. And finally, the sensory epithelial tissue are found in sensory organs like the taste buds of the tongue, the retina of the eye, etc. The second type of animal tissues is connective tissue. Connective tissue always tries to bind different tissues together. There are 3 main types: proper connective tissue, supportive connective tissue, and fluid connective tissue. Proper connective tissue are further classified as tendons, ligaments, areolar, and adipose. Tendons connect muscle to bone, and ligaments connect bone to bone. So between my bones of the arm at the elbow joint, I have the ligament connecting the bones so that they don't get disjointed very easily. If there is a tear in the ligament, then it's very painful and we need to rest so that it is repaired. Another difference between tendons and ligaments is that tendons have certain proteins called collagen and ligaments have a protein called elastin. Areolar tissue is a widely spread tissue occurring beneath the epidermis of the skin. So when we stretch the skin and we release it, we see that it regains its original shape. So the skin is elastic, and this elasticity is because of areolar tissue. Adipose tissue, it is used for storing fat, which is a source of energy, it is a source of food. But this fat covering in a body is useful in many other ways. For example, it protects us from external pressure, it provides warmth to the body in cold regions. Many of our internal organs have a layer of adipose tissue around them for protection. The next type is cartilage and bones, which are together called supportive tissue. Cartilage, like in the nose, there is no bone here. The cartilage is softer than bone. Bone is harder. Bone is porous, whereas cartilage is not. Bones have blood vessels through them. Cartilage does not have any blood vessels. Cartilage is semi-transparent, whereas bones are opaque. Cartilage is made up of certain cells which are called chondroblasts. As you can see in the diagram, the cartilage has chondroblasts, these cells. and the background substance is called the matrix. The empty space is called a lacuna, which is just a gap. This is very rare in cartilage. In bones, we have many such pores. It's abundant, and these pores are called Haversian canals. And these black cells are individually called osteoblasts. The matrix here has salts of calcium and phosphorus. And these osteoblasts are arranged in concentric circles around the Haversian canal, and these concentric circles are called lamellae. So these diagrams are very important. Finally, we have fluid connective tissue, blood and lymph. They belong to connective tissue because these cells are formed inside the bone. The bone marrow produces the RBCs, WBCs and platelets, apart from some other sources. The difference between blood and lymph, first of all, is that blood flows through blood vessels and lymph flows through lymph vessels. Now the blood has blood plasma, that is a matrix, the fluid, and it has three types of cells: RBCs, WBCs and platelets. RBCs have hemoglobin, so they help in transportation of oxygen and carbon dioxide in our body, which is useful for respiration. WBCs give us immunity and fight germs and foreign substances, so they are protective by nature. And blood platelets are very useful for clotting of blood. Lymph does not have RBCs and platelets. It just has the blood plasma with the dissolved ingredients, and it has WBCs. So it is protective by nature. Lymph is derived from blood. Blood plasma along with WBCs ooze out of the blood vessels to form interstitial fluid, tissue fluid, and when this tissue fluid drains into lymph vessels, we call it lymph. Ultimately, the lymph will join the blood once again. Next, the muscle tissue. That's of three types: striated, unstriated and cardiac. As you can see in this diagram, the striated muscles have dark and light bands, they have nuclei, whereas the unstriated muscle cells don't have any striations at all. The cardiac muscles are unique. They have striations. Now the striated muscles are also called skeletal muscles because they are responsible for all the voluntary movements of our body. They are in our control. When we move our hand, the skeletal muscles or the striated muscles are being used. The unstriated muscles are also called smooth muscles. They are found in the involuntary parts of our body, like the linings of the esophagus. When peristalsis happens and the food is pushed down through the alimentary canal, that is involuntary. So those muscles involved here in the intestine are unstriated. Even the muscles in the iris of the eye are unstriated because we cannot dilate or constrict the pupil out of our own will. Now cardiac muscles are unique because they have striations and yet they are involuntary. We cannot control the beating of the heart. It's automatic. And cardiac muscles hardly get tired. They beat for many years at length without stopping. And finally, we come to the neural tissues or the nerve tissues. The structural and functional unit of the nervous tissue is the neuron. One nerve cell has three main parts. The cell body is called the cyton. It has certain branches which are called dendrons, and the longest branch out of it is called the axon. The cyton is also called perikaryon. It has certain granules called Nissl granules with a nucleus in the center. The dendrons may have certain smaller branches which are called dendrites, and the axon has terminal branches which is called axon terminal. Now the axon is usually covered by a sheath called myelin sheath, which gives it white color. And there may be a second covering on it which is called neurolemma. Now the gaps in between, where the sheath is very thin or missing, is called node of Ranvier. The function of these nerve cells is to form a network, a chain throughout the body to connect the central nervous system with all the sensory organs of the body, so that it helps in responsiveness to stimuli. Electrochemical signals or impulses are passed through these nerve cells for communication between different parts of our body. So these nerve cells are responsible for perception, that is sight, hearing, taste, etc., and also for responding, that is taking an action, either through our muscles or through our glands, by secreting certain secretions. A bundle of axons together is called a nerve, And the way they make a chain is like this. The axon terminals of one neuron are closely associated with the dendrites of the next neuron. And this gap in between them, this junction between them is called a synapse.
Epithelial tissue. It's a thin, protective, continuous sheet of cells. Location, it covers the surface of the body and even lines, that is the internal layer of various body cavities and internal organs, including the blood vessels. Examples have to be learnt. Now, shape-wise, they can be classified further. We have squamous epithelium. Then we have cuboidal epithelium. Squamous is flat, irregular shapes. Cuboidal look like cubes. Columnar, like a rectangle. And finally, we have stratified epithelium. Ciliated columnar epithelium is just a derivative of columnar epithelium, subtype of columnar epithelium. So all of them have different functions. So overall, the functions of epithelial tissue are protection, like skin, absorption and secretion, like an intestine, sensory perception, example in our five senses. Squamous epithelium, they are flat, they have a big nucleus, and they are closely packed. Example, lining the mouth and nasal cavities. So you can't just write mouth and nasal cavities, you have to mention lining. Lining of blood vessels, lining of lymph vessels. So lots of locations and functions in this chapter which you need to remember. It protects the underlying parts from mechanical injury, germs, harmful chemicals, etc. That's a that is a function. Now, location of cuboidal epithelium. It is found in some parts of kidney tubules and in some glandular ducts like salivary glands, pancreatic duct, etc. Columnar epithelium, they are tall in size. They are generally found in the inner lining of stomach and intestines. You may want to make a table, your own notes in a tabular format where you have the type of tissue, the subtype, the location and function. Now, columnar epithelium may have two special types, ciliated columnar and glandular columnar. Ciliated columnar have cilia, that is hair-like projections at the end. So they keep lashing and they move the materials which enter these regions. They are found in a trachea windpipe. So if some dust particles go inside our windpipe, then they make sure, the cilia make sure that they are pushed out. Glandular epithelium. Now this is how the cilia look like. This is in chapter 14. And mucus is also produced to trap the dust particles in our trachea. And they keep lashing and moving about. Glandular epithelium is found in the lining of the stomach and the intestine. So, as the name suggests, its function is to produce some enzymes or other secretions. More examples, sweat glands, tear glands, or liver. Please understand that cuboidal epithelium was in salivary glands and pancreatic duct. So don't be confused between these two. Stratified epithelium. As you can see, there are many strata or layers on one on top of the other. So that's found in the skin and in the cornea, which is a part of the eye. We study that in 10th standard. Next type is connective tissue. So this table will be a good way to revise all the animal tissues before we move ahead. So as I said, epithelial tissue is of 4 types. Columnar has 2 subtypes. Now connective tissue, it's of 3 major categories. Connective tissue proper, supportive connective tissue, and fluid connective tissue. Connective tissue proper has 3 types, areolar, adipose, fibrous. Fibrous has 2 more types, tendons and ligaments. We're going to study all of this now. Supportive connective tissue is of 2 types, cartilage and bone. We should know the difference between them. And fluid connective tissue, yes, it's fluid, but it is derived from bone. You know, the blood cells are formed in the bone. So it is also a part of connective tissue. It's of 2 types, blood and lymph. By the way, lymph is derived from blood. Soon we'll talk about it. Muscular tissues, it's of 3 types, striated, unstriated, and cardiac. Striated are striped, as the name suggests, and they are voluntary muscles, like the ones in your biceps. Unstriated muscles are unstriped and they're involuntary, which means we have no control over it. For example, the muscles in your iris or in your esophagus walls. Cardiac is also involuntary. We cannot control it at all. It's found only in the heart. It is striated, surprisingly. It is branched. Nervous tissue are made up of neurons. That is a cell of a nerve. Neurons have axons, dendrons, and other parts, which we'll study soon. So connective tissue, as the name suggests, has a function which is to bind and connect various organs and keep them in their place. It has three characteristics. It has a matrix, that is a background. It has few cells, and it has fibers as well. So fibrous connective tissue looks like this. The background is the matrix. I see a few cells, and I see many fibers in it. There are three main categories: connective tissue, which serves for packing and binding the organs. So that's the function again. Supportive connective tissue, it gives support to the body, cartilage and bones. Fluid connective tissue, blood and lymph, which have their own functions. Now, connective tissue proper is of three types: areolar or packing tissue, location beneath the epidermis of the skin, function it makes the skin elastic. So if you pull your skin and you release it, skin will gain its original shape again. Of course, in old people, this ability reduces. Adipose tissue, well, they store fat. So where are they found? They are padding under the skin, around the kidneys, eyeballs, etc. You will also find them in your buttocks. It provides padding. Imagine sitting on a chair without any adipose tissue. That will be so uncomfortable. It also provides insulation for retaining body heat. That is why polar bears are so fat, because fat is an insulator. It preserves body heat from being lost. Fibrous connective tissue. No, I'm not fat shaming. It's a biological reality. Fibrous connective tissue is of two types: tendons and ligaments. Tendons join muscles to bone. For example, your biceps are connected to your bones in the arms with the help of tendons. And ligaments join bone to bone. I remember it like this: LLB, that is a degree of law. So ligaments and bones. So ligaments join bone to bone. Don't be confused between tendons and ligaments. Now, supportive connective tissue is of two types: cartilage and bone. Cartilage is non-porous, bone is porous. It has, both of them have matrix. Look at the cartilage here. The matrix, it has some cells called chondroblasts. Sometimes it has an empty lacuna. Bones, even this has a matrix, which is the white color thing. The black cells are the bone cells, which are called osteoblasts. The matrix is made up of salts of calcium and phosphorus, so it's inorganic, it's not living, but the bone cells are living. The cells are arranged in circles, which are called concentric lamellae. And in the center, there is a pore. Bones are porous. That hole is called Haversian canal. It's a pore. A single cell, if you magnify, it looks like this. So we should know the difference between them. It is semi-transparent, it is opaque. They have chondroplasts, they have osteoblasts. They have blood vessels and nerves, so if a bone breaks, it hurts and you may bleed. Cartilage does not have blood vessels and nerves. So where is it found? Tip of the nose, there is no bone there. That is why a skull does not have any bone at the nose area, if you have seen a skull. Similar to the one which Morocco found in the Lottery of Casket. In which casket? Which color? That's right. External ears also have cartilage. Tracheae, that is a windpipe, and even the bronchial tubes in our lungs. They're also found between the vertebrae of your backbone. So they act like a shock absorber and prevent friction between the bones when we are moving. Even at the ends of the long bone, so even in your knee joint or your elbow joint, between the long bones, there's cartilage as a padding and to lubricate the movement. We'll study more about it in a chapter called Skeletal System, that is chapter number 12. Now, difference between blood and lymph. Blood has a liquid part called plasma, which is 60% of the blood, and the remaining are the cells, which are RBCs, WBCs, and platelets. They flow in blood vessels. Lymph is a fluid which flows in lymph vessels. Please change this. It is not correct to say surrounding the body cells, because that is tissue fluid, that is something else. Lymph has blood plasma and WBCs, but it does not have RBCs or platelets. It is basically the blood plasma and WBCs which have oozed out of the blood vessels. So lymph is derived from blood, and ultimately it mixes with the blood, and you will study them in detail in chapter number 8 in 10th standard circulatory system. Now, both these fluids are responsible for transportation of gases, nutrients, etc. throughout the body, and also give us immunity because WBCs fight germs for us. Next, muscle tissue. It's useful for movements in the body. They can contract and relax. Remember, they cannot expand. Striated muscles are also called skeletal or striped or voluntary muscles. They are multinucleated, as you can see here. Multiple nuclei are possible. 1, 2. 50% of your body weight is because of them, and they are located in our arms, legs, face, neck, etc. Unstriated muscles like this one, the cells are spindle shaped and they have a single nucleus. They cannot be controlled by our will. And location, they are found in the walls of intestine so that they can do peristalsis, which we'll study in digestive system chapter, which is not in our control. That's how food keeps on moving forward. Iris of the eye, the pupils can dilate or constrict depending on how much light your body wants to enter into the eye. Skin may have it. That's why we have a hair standing on our skin sometimes. It's called piloerection. We'll study that in skin chapter. Lining of the blood vessels and urinary bladder and uterus, the womb, which is again not in our control. They are not striated. Unlike here, we have light and dark bands, but here there are no bands like that. So in the lining of blood vessels, we have unstriated muscles, but we also have the epithelial muscles, which we had studied earlier, the squamous epithelium. So multiple tissues are possible at a single location. Similarly, the leaf veins may have xylem, phloem, as well as sclerenchyma. Now, cardiac muscles are very special. They are striated and yet they are involuntary. They have branches. These labelings are not important. They are relatively short. They can contract without outside stimulation because they have their own nerves. And that's good so that even if you're in coma, your heart will continue to beat. They don't get tired soon. Imagine since you are born, the heart beats continuously till you die for maybe 100 years without taking a break. Nervous or neural tissue. This diagram is very important. Double tick it and practice it. It will come for drawing as well. So it has three main parts. Dendrons, the short branches. Axon, the longest branch. And cyton, the cell body. Dendrons have further branches called dendrites. The cyton, which is also called perikaryon, has some granules called Nessel granules and the nucleus. The axon may be covered by a sheath called neurolemma and myelin sheath. So remember, neurolemma is the outermost covering and myelin sheath is the innermost. Myelin sheath is white in color, by the way. There are some gaps in between which are called nodes of Ranvier. At the end, we have axon endings. So the axon endings of one neuron are closely in touch with the dendrites of another neuron. And that's how a synapse is formed and impulses can flow through it. And that's how we can sense through our sensory organs. And information reaches our brain and the spinal cord with the help of that. So that's the function of the nerve tissue. Perception and responses of animals. Imagine if you touch a hot object, your hand is taken aback without you even thinking. So the information is sent to the spinal cord and the spinal cord instructs the hand's muscles to take it back instantly. Nervous tissue is involved in that. A definition of one nerve, all the axons, many axons bundled together is called a nerve.
Hi students, this is AJ sir. If you like this video, press the like button. If you would like to enroll for my online test series or online lectures, email me or message me on Instagram. Check the description for more information.